Clare Bowmont held tightly onto Diana's hand in those final hours, gripping it long after life had left the room. For over 2 decades, Clare carried the weight of that night in absolute silence. She couldn't share the truth about Diana's last words, her final thoughts, or the ache of that moment. Hospital rules forced her to stay quiet. The law demanded her silence, but silence, too, comes with a price. Secrets can eat away at the soul. To anyone in her sleepy English village, Clare seemed utterly ordinary, just another retired nurse, with neat rows of flowers in her garden, and her spaniel trotting beside her each morning. Neighbors greeted her with kind nods and friendly small talk, never suspecting the memories that haunted her. No one could have guessed the story she kept hidden, the story of whose hand she held in Paris as history faltered. On that fateful night, August 31st, 1997, Clare was working the graveyard shift at Pitié-Salpêtrière. She was a veteran with 15 years on the trauma ward. She had seen heartbreak, tragedy, and the cruel twists of fate, but nothing in her entire career prepared her for what would come crashing through those hospital doors after midnight. At 12:18 a.m., the emergency call came in a massive wreck in the Alma Tunnel, several victims and dignitaries among them. Every member of the emergency team rushed into action with Clare right by their side. None of them knew the story that was about to unfold. They had no idea whose life was on the line. In that speeding ambulance, the room burst into chaos as medics pushed through the doors, stretchers rolling in, the sharp scent of blood filling the air, confusion spreading everywhere. And then Clare looked at her patient's face. Instantly, she recognized her reek was breathtaking. Princess Diana lay before her, even battered and unconscious. Her identity was unmistakable. Time seemed to stop, but the moment was intense. Diana's breathing was labored, her heart was struggling, and her blood pressure was dropping lower by the minute. Vital signs flashed warnings on the monitors, telling a grim story that Clare unfortunately had seen too many times before. A story with few survivors. The team jumped into action. Dr. Ryu called out instructions. Nurses sprang into motion. Vi-lines were connected, blood transfusions started, and cardiac compressions began. They used every tool in their medical arsenal. Clare's job was clear. Monitor the flickering vital signs, stay by Diana's side, record everything, and remain the silent observer. Her body responded as it was trained to do, her hands steady and sure, but inside her mind was spinning. Clare couldn't escape one overwhelming truth. Princess Diana was lying before her, fighting for her life. There she was, the bride whose wedding captivated the world, the beloved face on every magazine cover, the woman who enchanted an entire generation. To Clare, she wasn't just a patient, she was a mother, and those children somewhere tonight had no idea that their lives had just been changed forever. Diana was dying right there in plain sight. Heartbreak unfolded with every second that passed. The sharp scent of disinfectant filled the room, mixing with a heavy cloud of anxiety. Machines punctuated the silence with urgent rhythmic alarms. Hushed commands moved between exhausted doctors and nurses, all clinging to hope as reality crashed in around them. Clare felt it deep in her bones. Years of nursing had already told her the awful truth, long before anyone said it aloud. Despite the team's relentless efforts, every technique tried, every emergency protocol followed, Diana's vital signs kept falling. Clare called out the numbers, pressure dropping, heart stumbling, oxygen failing. The decline was methodical and merciless, each data point another step closer to the end. Clare had seen death arrive quietly many times before, but never before had it come for someone so alive, someone who truly belonged to this world. Never before had it arrived with such overwhelming force. Even as she worked, she noticed details that would stay with her forever. Diana's eyelashes brushed her cheeks with an impossible softness, untouched by the violence of the night. In her face, a fragile beauty lingered, even as tiny abrasions crossed her forehead, shallow wounds, none serious by themselves. But beneath the surface, disaster was unfolding silently. Clare understood. So did the doctors. Everyone in that stark, frantic room knew they were not going to win this fight. Dr. Ryu, France's leading heart surgeon, stopped at the foot of the bed just for a moment, just a breath. His face looked open, but haunted. Despite every skill, every resource at their disposal, they couldn't bring Diana back. She was slipping away right before their eyes. Inside, Clare wanted to protest, to scream at the injustice, to do anything but stand there powerless, watching life fade. But her duty kept her rooted. All she could do was announce the numbers, each one a reminder of defeat, each one carrying them further from hope. And then, in the midst of tragedy, Clare saw something she would never forget, an intimate detail no one else was meant to notice. For a brief moment, Diana's eyes fluttered open. Her gaze wandered uncertain, as if she'd woken from a horrible dream, only to find herself in an even worse reality. That flicker of awareness, recognition, fear, and desperate searching passed over her face. In that instant, she seemed to understand everything where she was, the danger she was in, and what was about to happen. Clare could see the silent plea in her eyes, a question left unspoken, a desperate cry for help. "Please help me." Suddenly, instinct took over. Clare acted without hesitation, forgetting for a moment the limits of her role. She reached for Diana's hand. It was cold to the touch, limp, and barely responsive. Still, there was the faintest pulse, a small sign of life. In that moment, Clare clung to that hand as if nothing else mattered, and for Diana, perhaps nothing did matter more. Leaning in close, Clare spoke softly. Her words meant only for Diana, calm and reassuring, trying to anchor her in a moment of deep fear. "You are not alone. I am here with you. You are not alone." Just then, Diana's fingers twitched. It was so subtle, it was hard to know if it really happened. Maybe Clare felt it only because she needed to, because hope was all she had left to hold. Clare desperately wanted to believe her words brought comfort. She needed to believe that in this shattering moment, her presence could ease Diana's final journey, even if just by a breath. She watched as Diana's lips parted, trying quietly to form words, but no sound escaped. Was she trying to speak? Clare leaned in closer, straining her ears against the beeping machines and the pounding of her own heartbeat, longing for even a single word, anything she could take from this room. But there was nothing, only a thin, fading breath. Gently, Clare whispered again, holding Diana close in a space only two mothers could understand. "Your boys, William and Harry, love you more than words can say." In that moment, Diana's eyes met Clare's. It was just a flicker, but enough to last a lifetime. Clare saw it all: gratitude, understanding, and a shared sense of humanity. No longer the global celebrity, nor the fairy tale bride, just a mother, fragile, real, and nearing the end of her story. Diana's eyelids grew heavy with exhaustion and resignation, closing for the final time. That was her last blink, the last conscious moment left behind. Even as the lights dimmed, Clare refused to let go. For the next 2 hours, as doctors tried everything they could, using every skill and clinging to every possible lifeline, Clare stayed by Diana's side, holding her hand even as hope faded. The monitors showed a heartbreaking decline. Each vital sign grew weaker, and every attempt to help just wasn't enough. Finally, a heavy silence filled the room as the doctors gave their verdict: the time of death. The team stepped back, their sense of defeat clear in the air. Diana was gone. Clare stayed, her fingers wrapped around Diana's cooling hand. Letting go felt impossible, even after death. Maybe especially then, no one should be left alone. It felt wrong that the woman, cherished by millions, should pass away alone. Only when a senior doctor gently touched her shoulder did Clare realize it was time. With a tender reluctance, Clare released her grip, as if a gentle touch might still reach Diana, and let go of her hand. The silence that followed thundered in Clare's ears. The machine stopped, and the urgent noise disappeared. Now there was only Diana lying motionless under the harsh lights. Once adored by crowds, she was now lifeless at just 36. No one was left to hold her hand. Clare quietly slipped out, found refuge in the staff bathroom, turned the lock, and finally let her grief pour out, unrestrained. These were not the practiced tears of a nurse mourning a patient. Instead, they were deep, gut-wrenching sobs, tearing open a hidden place inside her. Clare had held Princess Diana's hand at the very end, a moment both sacred and harrowing as she tried to offer comfort. Now she was left holding on to an agony she couldn't name, completely unprepared for its weight. The next morning, a heavy hush settled over the hospital. Leadership called in every staff member who'd been there that night. Their faces were somber, their words firm. "Nothing you saw or did here will ever leave these walls. Not a word to anyone, not to family, not to friends, not even a hint to the press." The instructions were clear. There was no room for debate. Official explanations followed: privacy laws, confidentiality, the weight of international consequences. But Clare listened beyond the legal phrases. She sensed the real message. It was about silence. Not just quiet, but total airtight silence. There was no allowance for grief, no space for personal truth. All that mattered was control, a story polished to perfection, untouched by raw emotion. And then documents slid across the table, non-disclosure agreements, heavy with legal threats and complicated jargon. Clare hesitated for a moment, realizing that what they wanted wasn't just her silence, but the history that came with it. Still, she signed her name on the dotted line. There was no real choice. In return, they handed her an envelope cash disguised as gratitude, a payment meant to keep her quiet. To Clare, it felt like blood money. She pressed her lips together, holding back what she wanted to say. That evening she carried a secret home, one that weighed on her and stayed hidden beneath her skin. She didn't tell a single soul, but of course her husband noticed a change. How could he not? He watched her, concern reflected in his eyes. After several days of tense silence, he finally spoke. "Something is different about you," he said. "What happened?" Clare wished she could tell the truth to let it spill out, and finally be free of it, but fear kept her silent. The threat behind those signatures lingered in her mind, haunting her every word, so she only gave fragments. A patient died, someone young. It was hard. It wasn't quite a lie, but it was far from the whole story. She kept quiet around her friends, even when they showed how much they cared. They asked gentle questions, trying to piece together the rumors themselves. Was it really Princess Diana? Were you there that night? Over time, Clare learned how to dodge these questions. She would change the subject, keep her distance, and let friendships fade, choosing silence over betraying the official story. She found it less painful than making up lies, much safer than revealing the truth. Even when reporters managed to track her down, she never broke her silence. For weeks, the phone rang endlessly. Persistent reporters offered cash, promised safety. They pleaded, "Just tell us what you saw. Share the real story. Name your price." Still, every time Clare ended the call, held on tightly to her secrets, and cut off all contact. She turned down every offer, blocked relentless numbers, and kept out of sight whenever cameras appeared. Her silence was complete, upheld by the law, fueled by fear, and rooted deep inside her. The days faded into weeks, and weeks blurred into months. While the world poured its grief into the streets and onto television screens, Clare mourned quietly, hidden in the shadows. Diana's funeral was broadcast around the globe, reaching billions of homes. Outside Kensington Palace, floral tributes piled up, growing taller than people, as if bouquets alone could keep the sorrow at bay. Crowds sobbed openly. Countries paused. History stood still. In the stillness of her living room, Clare sat alone. Her husband was away, and the silence pressed in around her. From her armchair, she watched William and Harry walk behind their mother's casket, two boys carrying heartbreak far beyond their years. One just 15, the other 12. Their faces were set with fragile determination. Clare remembered that final touch, the coldness in Diana's fingers, a gentle squeeze, a silent goodbye that no one else was meant to see. She acted to reach out to those boys, to close that impossible distance, and say she wasn't alone. "I stayed with her until the very end." Clare wished she could tell them. "I was there with her. I reminded her of your love. I made sure your mother knew just how much she meant to you both." But the contracts kept her silent. She had taken their money. She read the warnings and weighed the risks. Speaking came at a terrible price once she couldn't pay, so silence became her shield and her undoing. Night after night she lay awake, haunted by the same relentless memories: Diana's fading face, the beeping of failing machines, that single irreversible moment when life slipped away. Food held no comfort. Every bite tasted of sorrow and regret. Living a normal life grew impossible. Each day was a struggle to keep from being pulled under by invisible waves. Her husband pleaded with her, begged her to get help, to see a therapist, to open up to someone. But how could she ever say the words, "I held Princess Diana as she died, but I am forbidden from telling a soul"? Clare could already imagine the skepticism, or worse, the authorities who might believe her and bring consequences she couldn't bear. So she carried her agony alone. With every passing year, the unspoken truth pressed in around her, tighter and tighter. 5 years passed, then 10. Soon, 2 full decades had rolled by. Diana's boys became men. William married, and Harry built a life of his own. The world moved forward. Diana transformed from story to legend, gradually fading into the past. Yet, every August 31st, Clare would wake beneath the crushing weight of memory. Every year the date returned sharp and burning, a private anniversary branded deep inside her. On every August 31st, Clare relived Diana's final minutes, the touch of her hand, the words they whispered in that fragile space between life and death. She wondered endlessly, did Diana hear her? Did her presence matter, or was Diana already slipping away? The uncertainty gnawed at her, guilt settling in, deep and permanent. Clare had witnessed something immense, something sacred. Then she had to carry on as if it left no trace. When she turned 60, Clare walked away from the hospital for good. She and her husband retreated to quieter places, hoping the countryside's calm would bring relief. But instead, the silence only made every memory louder, echoing hauntingly through the night. More than once she woke suddenly from sleep, her palm tingling with the memory of that faint squeeze, a final thread tying her to Diana. Writing became her lifeline. At first it was just for herself, fragments jotted in a journal, recollections she felt she had to preserve before time erased them. She wrote down everything: the glint of Diana's hair in the harsh lights, the rhythm of the machines, and the moment when dread finally settled over her resolve. But above all, she wrote about holding Diana's hand, a deeply human connection at the heart of tragedy. It was a moment of care that no hospital record would ever capture. One day, her husband found the journal. He read every word, absorbing the pain and the memories she had poured onto those pages. When he finished, he turned to her, his voice thick with tears. You carried this alone for 26 years. Clare could only nod, her words trapped by a surge of emotion. He spoke gently. They told you not to sell your story, not to profit from tragedy, but they never said you couldn't bear witness. No one can outlaw truth. In that moment, something inside Clare shifted. For the first time, she realized there's a world of difference between profiting from pain and honoring a life, between marketing sorrow and simply standing as a witness, between money and memory. Diana's sons were now in their 40s, grown men shaped by rumors, uncertainty, and the carefully managed stories told to the public. Clare wondered if what they needed wasn't clinical facts or sensational headlines, but something much simpler, a reassurance, a quiet truth, that on their mother's last night she was not alone. Someone stayed by her side, whispering kindness and holding her hand until the end. Beneath all the layers of history and speculation, Diana was comforted as she slipped away. Isn't that what any child would wish for? That their parent found comfort at the very end. Clare chose her confidant carefully. She approached a journalist known for integrity and restraint. She insisted on no payment, no photos, and no spectacle. All Clare wanted was for the truth to finally breathe. The interview aired quietly one Tuesday morning, free of drama or embellishment. It was just her voice. I held Princess Diana's hand as she slipped away. I promised her she would not be alone. For 26 years, I stayed silent, but her sons deserved to know the truth in her final hour. Their mother was cared for. She did not have to face death alone. The world responded quickly and passionately. Many praised her bravery and honesty, calling her a rare witness to history. Others condemned her, calling her disloyal and accusing her of breaking her oath, saying she only spoke when it was safe to do so. Clare expected the backlash. She had accepted it long before. But what truly surprised her was the letter. 3 weeks after the interview, it arrived, a cream-colored envelope with the royal seal sent straight from Kensington Palace. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. Inside was a carefully written note in blue ink. The letter was simply addressed, "Dear Miss Bowmont, thank you for being with her that night. Thank you for holding my mother's hand, for making sure she didn't face it alone. For 26 years, we've carried our own torment, haunted by images of her final moments, afraid she might have left this world surrounded by strangers, frightened, maybe even calling for us. Your truth brought us a peace we never thought possible. You let us know she was cared for, treated with kindness, and never left alone. You honored her then, and you still honor her now with deepest thanks." William Clare read those words again and again, letting them sink into every wound left by years of keeping secrets. Finally, she broke down, not from guilt or sorrow, but from a sense of release. The heavy burden she had carried for more than 2 decades was finally gone. She no longer doubted herself. That night by Diana's side, the quiet words, the simple act of holding her hand, these were not betrayals. They represented the purest form of honor, a kindness lasting beyond memory. At last, Clare knew she had done what was right. In the end, Clare had done more than lift a burden from her own soul. She reminded the world that Diana was not just a royal figure or a public symbol, but a real woman, a mother, beloved and human, whose final moments did not pass in cold isolation. Because Clare was there, Diana did not slip away unnoticed. Now Clare lives far from cameras and questions. Her days are filled with quiet joys, tending her garden, walking her dog, and savoring a simpler life. Each year, as August fades, she steps into the twilight and remembers. She recalls Diana's gentle touch, the quiet words of reassurance whispered in the darkness. "You are not alone," She thinks of what it meant to be the silent witness to such a private ending. Told to keep this secret, she honored that silence for over 20 years. But some truths hold their own gravity. They're too important to keep locked away. Some stories need to be shared, not for applause or reward, but because someone needs to hear them. Diana's sons deserve to know that their mother's final hours were filled with compassion. Someone was there. Someone was there to offer comfort. Someone made sure Diana faced her final moments, not as a symbol, but as a beloved human being. This is the truth Clare carried in silence for years. Finally, she brought that truth into the light. In the end, it gave William the peace he had always sought. There are times when silence does nothing but build walls and cast shadows, when it protects no one. Sometimes the most respectful thing we can do is to finally speak gently, honestly, and with unwavering honor.